In the first narration, the immersion is mentioned as the last sign, while in the second, the immersion is mentioned as the first sign, thus indicating that the signs of the last days are not mentioned in chronological order. As previously explained, 3. This immersion is considered to be one of the major signs of the hour, not the usual earthquakes that occur here and there. But what is meant by the immersion is a number of major and essential events that affect the magma in the earth. If this is not the earthquake in question, then what is the importance of mentioning it here, amid other major signs? Moreover, the word sign indicates that this immersion will occur through an unusual, abnormal, or non-existent cause. Although we assume that the signs are not mentioned in the hadith, chronologically, the 3 immersions are, according to the strongest conjecture, mentioned in order of time. This is because the 3 immersions are considered to be one continuous sign, so that the first immersion took place in the east, followed by the immersion in the west, and then the immersion in the Arabian Peninsula. In other hadiths, the nature of this great immersion is described, with the additional information that there was an army that wanted to attack the Kaaba. The clues obtained from the redaction suggest that the army that was immersed in the earth was an army that aimed to fight the Mahdi, when the latter took refuge in the Kaaba, while the place from which the Mahdi was sent was Sham. The great immersion took place. This immersion is one of the clear signs of the appearance of the Mahdi. The correct view is that the immersion that takes place in the Arabian Peninsula at the time of the Mahdi is the 3rd immersion in the major signs of the last days. This is the strongest possibility. Based on the strongest possibility, we can determine the period of the 3rd immersion or the last immersion, which is the period when the Mahdi will come out, and this will be before the appearance of the Dajjal. If we assume, as we have explained earlier, that the smoke appears before the appearance of the Dajjal, and that it is a preparation for the appearance of the Dajjal, and is one of the signs that the time of the Dajjal is approaching, then it is most likely that the other 2 immersions will occur before the appearance of the smoke or after it, because they could be the result of the appearance of the smoke, which has already been explained in connection with the falling of the pieces from the sky. What I have described is corroborated by the Atsar narrated from Ka'b, may Allah be pleased with him, in one of his words. And a star that was thrown like an arrow from the sky, accompanied by a loud noise, until it fell in the east, and a great calamity befell the people because of the star. Narrated by Nuwaym ibn Hamid, No. 621, whose Muhakkik said, "The chain of transmission is Hazan." This report, narrated from Ka'b, links the loud noise and the falling of the debris of the heavenly body in the east with the resultant catastrophe was a result of the falling of debris from the heavenly bodies there. 6. The exodus of the people of Medina. Abu Dar radiyallahu anhu reported that he said, "We came with the Messenger of Allah. Then we stopped to rest in Dhul Hulaifa. Then a number of people hurried back to Medina. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, spent the night there, and we also spent the night with him. In the morning, he asked about those who had rushed back to Medina. He said, they were in a hurry to return to Medina. He said, they are in a hurry to return to Medina, and head for the women their wives and or slaves. Behold, they will leave it in the best state it has ever been in." Then he said, "If, when the fire comes out of Yemen, from the mountain of Waraq, the necks of the camels would be as brightly illuminated by it when they are roaring in Bushra, as they are by the light of day." Ahmad, Musnad al-Anshar, Hadith No. 21347. Sahih. Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "For Medina, its inhabitants will leave it in its best state, in a state of subjection to a wafi, that is wild animals and birds." Muslim, Al-Hajj, Hadith, No. 1389. Mu'adh ibn Jabal reported that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "The prosperity of Bayt el-Maqdis is the fall of Yastrib. The fall of Yastrib is the occurrence of a great battle. The Great Battle is the liberation of Constantinople. And after the liberation of Constantinople, the appearance of Dajjal. Then he tapped his hand on the thigh of the person to whom he was speaking, or on his shoulder, and said, "This is as real as you are here, or as you are sitting here." He was referring to Mu'adh bin Jabal. Al-Bukhari, Fadhail, Chapter Fadhail Madinah, Hadith No. 1873. Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Madinah will be left in its best state, so that a dog or a wolf will enter it, and then eat on one of the pillars of the mosque or on the pulpit." The companions asked, "O Messenger of Allah, for whom will the fruits of that time be?" He replied, "For the awafi, birds and wild animals," reported by Malik in Al-Muwatta, Hadith No. 1381. Hudhayfa radiyallahu anhu reported that he said, "The Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, told me what would happen until the day of resurrection." We say, these 5 hadiths speak of the fall of Madinah. There are other hadiths that speak of events similar to this collapse, and we will discuss them in a future topic. After the discussion of this event leads us to the conclusion that the exodus from Madinah occurred several times, not just one time. These hadiths hint at one of these exodus events. The testimony that we find in the hadiths that have been presented is that the people of Madinah will leave the city in its best state. If this is the case, then this event requires that there was a cause that forced them to do so. In some of these hadiths, namely the one narrated by Abu Hurairah, it is mentioned that what drove the people of Madinah out of the city were evil leaders. This explanation only applies to one of the occasions when they left, and that was during the reign of Yazid at the Battle of Hira. In the hadith of Mu'adh bin Jabal, there is a connection between two things, namely that the fall of Madinah is closely related in time to the prosperity of Bayt al-Maqdis. The prosperity of Bayt al-Maqdis, as indicated by the reaction of this hadith, means the establishment of the caliphate at the time of al-Mahdi. Because of the connection between this prosperity and the great battle that will take place at the end of time. The hadith of Abu Dar indicates that the exodus of the people of Madinah was caused by the appearance of a great fire from Mount Warak in Yemen, which lit up the necks of camels in the Levant. This is a metaphor to show the magnitude of the fire. The last mentioned hadith of Hudhayfa, may Allah be pleased with him, indicates that the exodus of the people of Madinah will not happen at the time of the destruction of the world. It is just a future event that will befall the city of Madinah al-Munawwara. Conclusion: the exodus of the people of Madinah took place when the city was at its best. Their exodus was total, encompassing the entire population to the extent that there was no fruit left there, except for birds and wild animals. The Prophet's mosque was abandoned by its residents and worshippers so that dogs and wolves could freely enter it, even urinating on its pulpit. None of this would have happened except for the dramatic event that prevented the people of Medina from remaining in the city, an obstacle that could not be dismissed. This exodus of the people of Medina took place after the establishment of the caliphate in Bayt al-Maqdis, before the great battle Armageddon. The time of this event can be determined next, but it is not what happens at the hands of evil leaders, as was the case in Hira, nor is it what happens in the last moments of the world, when there is a great gathering, as some hadiths suggest. Hudhayfa's last hadith is a clear sign that this exodus of the people of Madinah is not the final exodus at the time of the destruction of the world. What is meant by the exodus of the inhabitants of Madinah is their removal at the time of the establishment of the caliphate, before the great battle Armageddon. And this is what the hadith of Mu'adh indicates. This timing also allows us to relate this event to the hadiths that relate the descent of the caliph in Bayt al-Maqdis, the years of the earthquake, and a number of other major events. What happened in Medina was one of these major events. There is a clear explanation in one of the Atsar about the emergence of fire from Mount Warak. The clue from the redaction suggests a connection between the exodus of the people of Madina and the heat emitted by this mountain, or by the volcanic crater of one of the volcanoes in the vicinity of Madina al-Munawwara. There is also information that indicates the severity of the heat, to the extent that its flames could illuminate the darkness of the night in the interior of the Levant. Such a horrific volcanic eruption is not an uncommon natural phenomenon, even for active volcanoes. So what about this inactive volcano near Yemen? A reflection. Dr. Zaghlul Nayyar explains that Madina al-Munawwara is surrounded by around 700 volcanic craters in the ground. No less than 300 earth movements have been recorded within a year, confirming that the volcanic craters are still active. Next, it will surely erupt one day. Scientific certainty confirms it. Dr. Zaghlul's statement brings us closer to the description that I have mentioned, namely, the possibility of a violent volcanic eruption that completely engulfs Madina al-Munawwara, and that will be the cause of the people of Madina fleeing their city. What is the connection between the exodus of the inhabitants of Madina and natural events? Yemen, or as a result of the eruption of the volcano in the vicinity of Madina al-Munawwara. Then what does this have to do with the falling of debris from celestial bodies, or with other natural events? This question can be answered with a simple answer. Anyone who follows a thorough study of all the hadiths in this discussion, and the time period in which they occurred, will undoubtedly recognize the connection between all these events. Let me be clear, this volcanic eruption was not a normal eruption. It was closely associated with years of great earthquakes and catastrophes. It could also be related to the abnormal changes that took place in the Arabian Peninsula, which turned it into grasslands and rivers. The evidence as a whole points to abnormal changes in the Earth's geology, climate, and weather. This is where a new question arises. What happened to the Earth during that period of time that caused it to experience such severe shocks and earthquakes? The answer is obvious: the occurrence of a number of abnormal events, or extraordinary occurrences on the Earth's sphere as a whole, including the occurrence of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, the falling of pieces of celestial bodies to the Earth. And the resulting effect is a powerful destructive force, which exceeds the power of 100,000 nuclear bombs. This kind of destruction obviously causes great shaking and changes in the Earth's bowels as well as its surface, which gives us an understanding of the interrelationship between some of these major events. Then it would have been sufficient to say here that their exodus occurred during the same period as these natural events. The smoke, then the sanctified caliphate in Bayt el-Maqdis, then the great battle Armageddon, then the Dajjal. It is also mentioned here that there is a connection between the fall of Madina that occurred between the fall of the caliphate in Bayt el-Maqdis and the great battle. In other words, the exodus of the people of Medina from the city was very close in time to the exodus of the Dajjal. This contradicts what is presented here that Medina at that time was empty because it was abandoned by its inhabitants. How can we describe the departure of the inhabitants of Madina from the city, and then the city being prosperous again at the same time? The answer to this problem is simple. It has to do with people's attitude towards these natural events, on the one hand, and the time gap between the great battle and the coming of the Dajjal on the other. It is well known that when there is a violent eruption of a volcano, earthquake, hurricane, or other natural disaster, people usually flee from the scene because of the danger that is threatening them. When the danger is gone, then they return to the towns and villages they left behind. What happened in Medina was not envisioned to last for a long time. The longest time would be a year or two, when there was a volcanic eruption that was not like other eruptions. Based on this assumption, it can be said that the hadiths describing the abandonment of Madina are referring to that period only. Then at a later time, its inhabitants would return to the city. Their motivation to return to Medina was very strong, because Medina is a city that has many privileges in Islam. It has been confirmed in a number of other hadiths that the interval between the Great Battle Armageddon and the appearance of the Dajjal was 7 years. The abandonment of Medina by its citizens took place before the battle, so there was at least 8 years between these two events. And that was enough time to bring Medina back to its former prosperity. In addition, my explanation is also corroborated by several hadiths that clearly explain the link between the exodus of the people from Medina and the fitna of the Dajjal, confirming that this was during the same period, and that the exodus of the people of Medina occurred first for reasons that forced them to do so, after which the fitna of the Dajjal occurred. One of these hadiths is that related by Mijan ibn Adra radiyallahu anhu, the Messenger of Allah took me by the hand and climbed the hill of Uhud. Then he looked at the city of Medina and said, "Woe to its mother, a city whose inhabitants leave it in a good state, or in its best state, and the Dajjal comes to it. But he finds at each of its doors an angel with both wings drawn like swords, so that the Dajjal cannot enter it." Ahmad, Hadith No. 19,000. Al-Haythami said, this hadith was narrated by Ahmad. Its narrators were used by al-Bukhari in his Sahih, apart from Raja ibn Haywa, while Lunyu Hibban considered him a Siqat narrator. The hadith at the bottom of the page is the solution to this problem. It relates the period between the exodus of the people of Medina and the Dajjal's subsequent siege of the city.